Long before the Dark Ages, before empires burned and languages vanished, there was a city built on light, a city that stood where Africa met the Mediterranean, where trade, culture, and ideas from every corner of the known world converged like rivers into a single sea, Alexandria. It wasn't just a city, it was a heartbeat. Founded by Alexander the Great, ruled by the Ptolemies, it became a living monument to knowledge itself. Here, under the blazing Egyptian sun, humanity's greatest experiment took form, an attempt to collect all wisdom, all science, all truth in one place. The Great Library of Alexandria. Ancient writers spoke of its endless halls, rows of papyrus scrolls stretching farther than the eye could see, containing the words of every philosopher, every poet, every astronomer that ever lived. Mathematicians, physicians, theologians, geographers, all came to study, to debate, to dream. It was here that Euclid shaped geometry, that Archimedes refined the laws of physics, that Eratosthenes measured the circumference of the earth with nothing more than shadows and sunlight. It was here, perhaps, that humanity first dared to believe it could understand the universe itself. But even light casts shadow, and Alexandria's brilliance drew not only scholars, but envy. As empires shifted and religions rose, the library became a target, a symbol of pagan arrogance and forbidden knowledge. Its scrolls contained ideas that questioned the heavens, the gods, and the nature of the soul. To some, that made it sacred. To others, heresy. What truly happened next has been debated for centuries. Did Julius Caesar's fire consume it in 48 BCE when his ships burned the docks? Did Christian zealots destroy what remained under Emperor Theodosius? Or did the Muslim conquest centuries later finally erase its last traces? No one knows for sure, because no one ever found the ashes. For centuries, the world believed the story ended there, that the library was gone forever, its scrolls turned to smoke and legend. But what if that wasn't the end?
No, there's the burning of the Library of Alexandria where they lost a lot of the information, but
I think that might have been book heist.
really?
What if the library didn't burn? It simply disappeared? In 2002, a team of marine archaeologists surveying Alexandria's ancient harbor discovered something extraordinary. Beneath layers of silt and coral, they found remnants of marble columns, shattered statues, and fragments of inscription that once lined the walls of the royal quarter, the district where the library was said to have stood. Among the ruins lay charred papyrus fused with sand, and something even stranger, symbols not of fire, but of departure. Carved into one of the stones was a single Greek phrase, phos ou svinu. The light does not go out. The message was cryptic, but to those who studied it, it suggested something unthinkable, that the knowledge was not lost, but hidden, moved, perhaps, before the flames came. Historians have long puzzled over how a civilization so advanced, so determined to preserve knowledge, could allow it to vanish completely. The truth is, maybe they didn't. Ancient letters discovered in the Vatican archives mention a transfer of scrolls to safety across the Western Sea. Greek philosophers fleeing persecution after the fall of the Ptolemies wrote of a second library away from the madness of kings. And centuries later, Arabic scholars spoke of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, a place whose foundation mirrored the very structure of Alexandria's lost halls. Was it coincidence? Or was the spirit of the great library still alive, scattered across time, waiting to be found again? Even now, archaeologists debate what Alexandria's library really was, a building or an idea, because if knowledge can be moved, preserved, copied, then perhaps the library never truly died. Perhaps it simply went underground, literally and metaphorically. And yet, for all the theories, for all the myths, one question still haunts the ruin. If the library survived, where is it now? The answer, as one archaeologist would later write, lies not in the ashes above, but in the silence below. Because beneath modern Alexandria, beneath centuries of rubble and salt, there is another city, a labyrinth of tunnels, sealed chambers, and forgotten halls. Most are flooded, some are unreachable, and somewhere in that labyrinth, hidden beneath the weight of history, may lie what the world has spent 2,000 years trying to find: the last light of Alexandria. The library was said to contain 500,000 scrolls, but perhaps its greatest secret was not what it stored, but how far its guardian would go to save it. For centuries, the sands of Alexandria have hidden more than ruins. They have hidden silence, a silence so deep that even time seemed afraid to disturb it. But silence is never eternal, and when machines began to hum again beneath the old city, that silence finally broke. In 2017, a joint team of Egyptian and European archaeologists launched what was, at first, a routine urban excavation near the ancient royal harbor. Their goal was simple: to map the submerged ruin that had slipped into the sea after centuries of earthquakes and coastal collapse. But within days, the instruments began to record something strange: a dense, geometric void beneath the limestone foundation. At first, they assumed it was a natural cavity, maybe a collapsed cistern, but the sonar images told another story. The walls were straight, perfectly straight. No natural process could carve lines that precise. When divers descended to the site, visibility was low, the water thick with sediment and dust from millennia of decay. Yet, through the murk, their lights caught the glint of something impossible. Carved stone, arranged like the mouth of a passage. The entrance was narrow, sealed by centuries of coral and silt, as if the sea itself was guarding it. Inside, cameras revealed a corridor stretching for almost 30 meters before vanishing into darkness. Along its walls were faint etchings, patterns of reeds and scrolls, the unmistakable emblem of Musayon, the ancient institute of learning that once crowned the library complex. It was as if the past had opened its eyes again, just long enough for us to see it. At the surface, the discovery sent ripples across the archaeological world. If the markings were authentic, they could rewrite everything we knew about the Library of Alexandria's final days. Had its scholars constructed hidden vaults beneath the main building? And if so, what had they placed inside them? The dig expanded quickly. Every meter revealed new fragments: a bronze stylus, a clay jar sealed with wax, and several fragments of papyrus blackened not by fire, but by seawater. The texts were too damaged to read fully, but one phrase survived, scrawled in ancient Greek: "We carried the voice of reason to the sea." It wasn't a poetic metaphor, it was a message. And for the lead archaeologist, Dr. Amira Nasser, it was the clue that changed everything. She believed the scrolls weren't destroyed in Alexandria at all. They were moved. The scholars, knowing their city was doomed, could have smuggled the most precious works out of the city through tunnels leading to the old harbor and loaded them onto ships bound west. It would explain the centuries of silence, the missing text, the absence of true ashes. Satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar confirmed that the tunnels extended far beyond the dig site, miles inland, and even beneath the modern streets. Each passage connected to sealed chambers filled with broken pottery, ash, and, in some cases, melted bronze. Evidence of a deliberate collapse, not destruction by fire. It was as if someone had locked away their knowledge and then erased the key. By late 2018, the team unearthed something that froze them in place: a marble tablet, half eroded by saltwater, inscribed with both Greek and Demotic script. When translated, it read, "For those who seek the truth, follow the shadow of the lighthouse." The Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, had guided ships across the sea for centuries before crumbling into the waves. But now, it seemed it might still be guiding someone. Not through the sea, but through time. What if the library's greatest secret had been buried not under the city, but beyond it, somewhere along the path of the ancient trade routes, where the guardians of knowledge had fled? The evidence was mounting, and for Dr. Nasser, there was no turning back. She assembled a small team of researchers and engineers, determined to trace the shadow of the lighthouse, wherever it might lead. Their search would take them far, from Alexandria's shining coast and deep into the forgotten deserts of North Africa, where the sand itself whispered stories of something ancient and hidden. The journey to find the lost library was no longer about ruin. It was about uncovering a decision made 2,000 years ago, a decision that changed the fate of human knowledge. The library may have been lost, but someone, somewhere, had made sure it would never be forgotten. History is written by the victors, but its truth often travels in silence. And sometimes that silence moves across ocean. As Dr. Nasser's team followed the faint trail left by the inscription, "Follow the shadow of the lighthouse," they realized it wasn't just a poetic clue, it was a direction. Ancient trade maps revealed that the shadow of the Pharos lighthouse, when extended westward across the Mediterranean, intersected with a cluster of forgotten coastal settlements near modern-day Libya. Settlements that existed during the final years of the Ptolemaic dynasty, when the library still stood. In the ruins of one such settlement, now little more than wind-swept rubble, they found evidence of something that shouldn't have been there. Greek pottery, marked with the royal seal of Alexandria. Bronze weights inscribed with the word Musayon, and buried beneath the remnants of a collapsed structure, a fragment of papyrus sealed inside a clay vessel, astonishingly preserved by the desert air. The writing was faint, but legible. It spoke of a transfer to the western shore before the coming of the fires, a single passage that suggested a desperate evacuation, a migration of knowledge before destruction. For centuries, historians assumed the great library perished in a single night of flame, but the evidence was painting a new story. The library may have been moved, not once, but several times. Each time a new empire rose or fell, its guardians carried fragments of its knowledge further away, hiding them where power could not reach. The theory seemed impossible, until the team uncovered the next piece of the puzzle. Among the ruins was a marble tablet etched with 3 words in Greek: Eremos Sophia Thalassa, the desert holds wisdom. That phrase appeared nowhere else in recorded history. Not in any temple, not in any text, but when cross-referenced with early Byzantine manuscripts stored in the Vatican archives, one peculiar document emerged. a letter dated around 391 AD, written by a scholar named Marcus of Cyrene. It read, "When Alexandria burned, the guardians of the scrolls took the sea route. They hid the greater knowledge in a temple across the dunes, where water once touched the sand." It was the first direct reference to an organized evacuation of the library's contents, and it described a place that, until now, no one could locate. Dr. Nasser's team used satellite imaging to trace the ancient shorelines of North Africa, searching for regions that once held water but are now buried beneath sand. The results revealed an enormous dry basin hidden beneath the Libyan desert, a formation large enough to have once been an inland sea. And near its northern rim, radar scans detected the faint outline of stone walls arranged in a perfect semicircle, exactly like the reading chambers of Alexandria's library. The discovery shook the academic world. If true, it meant that the library didn't die with the fall of Alexandria. It simply moved into the desert, preserved by those who refused to let knowledge die. But there was something else. Deep within the satellite imagery, one chamber appeared isolated from the rest. A sealed room with no visible entrance. To the naked eye, it was nothing more than a dark square under tons of sand. But infrared scans revealed inscriptions etched into its roof, visible only from above. The words were clear: to be opened when the world forgets again. What did that mean? Was it a warning? A message from those who knew that history repeats itself, that ignorance would always return, and one day humanity would need to remember once more? The deeper Dr. Nasser's team dug, the more dangerous their work became. The desert was merciless, and each excavation risked collapse. But the greatest threats were not natural. As news spread of their findings, funding began to vanish. Local officials blocked permits. Anonymous warnings arrived, letters urging them to stop disturbing the past. And yet, they couldn't stop, because the deeper they went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just archaeology, it was recovery. They weren't uncovering ruins. They were uncovering intent. The intent of a civilization that foresaw its own fall and planted a seed for the future. The intent of men and women who believed that wisdom was worth saving, even if it meant burying it for 1,000 years, somewhere beneath the dunes, under the weight of forgotten centuries. They knew something still waited, intact, untouched, and alive with the breath of history. A vault that had survived fire, empire, and time itself. And what they would soon find would change everything the world believed about where the story of knowledge truly began, and whether it ever ended at all. The desert doesn't reveal secrets easily. It buries them, hardens them, and waits for those patient, desperate enough to listen. By the time Dr. Nasser's team reached the coordinates of the suspected vault, months had passed. They had fought through storms, collapsed tunnels, and endless bureaucracy. But in the stillness of one dawn, the scanners finally picked up a hollow space beneath the sand. An anomaly too perfect to be natural. Excavation began in silence. There were no reporters, no announcement. Only a handful of people knew what was happening deep in the Libyan desert. Each night, the wind erased their footprints, as if nature itself wanted to hide their work. By the third week, they uncovered the first signs of the structure: smooth sandstone steps descending into darkness. Unlike anything in North Africa, the design was distinctly Hellenistic. Columns carved with spiraling patterns of reeds and flames. And just above the entrance, faint but unmistakable, were 3 Greek letters: Mu, the beginning of a single word; Museion, the museum, the library. The air inside was dry and cold. The passage sloped down into a vast chamber, sealed by what looked like molten stone, a technique used by ancient engineers to fuse blocks together so that even earthquakes couldn't separate them. When the team drilled through the final layer, cameras slid into the opening, revealing a space untouched for nearly 2,000 years. The first images were breathtaking. Rows of niches cut into the walls, each designed to hold scrolls or clay tablets. Some were empty, others filled with fragments of papyrus hardened by time. In the center stood a low stone table, carved with constellations and zodiac symbols, identical to those used by Alexandrian astronomers. And lying across it, perfectly preserved, was a bronze stylus. The team moved carefully, every movement recorded. One of the archaeologists, pale with disbelief, whispered the words none of them dared to say aloud. We found it. But the deeper they explored, the stranger it became. Amid the dust and relics, they discovered objects that didn't belong to the Ptolemaic era. Lantern shards made from 18th century glass, footprints frozen in the silt, and most disturbingly, a piece of parchment written in Latin. It was dated 1725. Someone had already been here. The Latin script was short, almost cryptic: non omnia legenda sunt. Not everything is meant to be read. It was as if whoever entered centuries ago had taken something and left a warning. The realization hit the team like a wave. The site hadn't just been hidden, it had been found, sealed again, and then erased from history a second time. Whoever did it possessed knowledge and technology that shouldn't have existed in the 18th century. How had they located this chamber long before modern tools? And what had they taken with with them. In one corner of the main vault, they found evidence of disturbance: a broken urn, fragments of melted wax, and what appeared to be a small, empty bronze container. Carbon dating later confirmed it was the same age as the Latin parchment. It was likely used to transport scrolls that were now gone. But there was one chamber left, sealed behind a slab, marked with a faint symbol of an open eye. When the archaeologists managed to lift it, what they saw silenced them. Inside, the walls were blackened, not from fire, but from deliberate charring, as if someone had burned every inscription to keep them unreadable. All except one. On the rear wall, preserved by some miracle, was a single Greek phrase written in gold leaf: "The logos ou apolita." The word is never lost. Even after centuries, it gleamed faintly in the beam of their flashlights. It was both comforting and terrifying, because if the word was never lost, it meant it could still be found. And if someone had already been here, maybe they had found it first. As Dr. Nasser stood inside the silent chamber, surrounded by the remnants of 2,000 years of secrecy, she realized something chilling. The library wasn't a place anymore. It was a trail, a moving shadow that humanity had been chased since the dawn of memory. And every time someone got close, someone else made sure it stayed hidden. That night, the team sealed the chamber again. They took samples, photographs, fragments, but no one spoke during the long drive back to camp. Each of them carried the same thought, unspoken but heavy. What if the great Library of Alexandria was never destroyed, but protected, not from fire, but from us? When the discovery reached the surface, it didn't make headlines. There were no press releases, no documentaries, no debates, only silence. Within weeks, the excavation site was closed. For safety reasons, equipment was confiscated, permits revoked, and the team was told to leave the desert immediately. Dr. Nasser tried to contact the institution that had once funded her work. None replied. Her data access was restricted, her notes flagged as classified. Even the satellite images of the region vanished from public archives. It was as if the desert had swallowed the discovery all over again. But fragments remained. A handful of papyrus samples quietly made their way to private labs in Europe. Carbon dating confirmed the impossible. They were authentic, older than the Roman conquest, and contained text from works never before recorded, including references to mechanical astronomy and early optics centuries ahead of their time. For a brief moment, it seemed the truth would resurface. But before the findings could be published, the labs went silent too. The samples were seized under international preservation orders. The story ended just as it began, in smoke and mystery. Yet among the ruins, something endured. A message carved into the final chamber still echoes. The word is never lost. Maybe it wasn't a prophecy. Maybe it was a promise. Because knowledge doesn't die. It moves from hand to hand, from mind to mind, hidden in art, in language, in memory. Every time humanity forgets, someone remembers again. And somewhere, under the sand, or behind the sealed doors of history, the last light of Alexandria still burns, waiting for a world wise enough to face it.